Right. Thank you. I totally agree with Jean-David that we have no interest in having a nuclear Iran. That is a common interest. But still, we, with many other countries represented here, we have a symmetrical interest, security interest, because for us, the main security threat is coming from the jihadist camp of terrorists and extremists, given our own Islamic community, and not from Iran, at least currently. I will tackle several issues related to this very interesting report presented to us by General Yadlin. So first, about 3 dimensions of Iran's nuclear, so well known, but I'd like to mention them. Nuclear activities. First, Iran's nuclear energy plants that are envisaging the development of electricity generation via nuclear power plants. So this is regarded as normal, but also these plans are not likely to be implemented without assistance from abroad. And it's not capable to ensure Iran's energy security. So second dimension is, so it's not a conflictual case. Second case is a bit more conflictual, is production of low-enriched uranium, enriched up to 20%, for the so-called Tehran research reactor. So as it was mentioned here, Iran rejected the multinational option suggested by the Vienna group and began building up its own stockpile. So that's more conflictual case, but the third case is more conflictual. It's Tehran making gradual progress towards possessing the full nuclear fuel cycle by establishing an industrial infrastructure for uranium enrichment. So here we see more contradictions and more reasons for conflict. About 50 tons of uranium ore is mined in Iran on an annual basis, but it is not enough to solve the problem of providing enough uranium for the energy generating facilities. According to our experts, the overall proven uranium reserves in Iran, if possessed into fuel elements needed to run nuclear power stations, will be sufficient for the operation of 2 nuclear power reactors, similar to the Bushehr one, over 7-10 years only. So this is not also enough for their plans, if they are realistic. As we know, Iran opened the yellow cake production facility, which is a chemical concentrate of uranium oxide, the key raw material for uranium enrichment for civilian nuclear energy, as well for making nuclear weapons. We also know that this is very costly for Iran. So they say that it's necessary for the peaceful purposes, but we know that the ore mining is at the depth of 350 meters, and it is very costly, and 1 kilogram of yellow cake produced from the ore mined under the most complicated Sagand conditions will cost more than $200 US, and the market price is only $40. So this is that our experts also believe that it's not economically justified. So that's why there are a lot of doubts about necessity for Iran to do that. The issue of serious concern for many industry players is the activity related with uranium enrichment. As we know, that the IAEA Director General stated that 2 fuel enrichment plants at Natanz and Fordow fuel enrichment that are in operation. I'm not going to quote here figures, but as we know that tentatively, as of April, as of now, Iran has about 8.5 tons of uranium enriched to 3 to 5%, and around 310 kilograms of uranium enriched to 20%. Of course, there are a lot of rhetorics there. The Iranians are saying about the intentions, but we can say that they're given to public in response to sanctions. Some of them are internationally approved by Security Council. Some of them are unilateral. As we know that, for instance, so one of the statements said by an advisor to the Supreme Leader Khamenei, Mr. Taghavi, he said that Iran would increase uranium enrichment to 56% if the world powers continued to exert their pressure in connection with Iran's nuclear program, and so on. But this is also caused by, I think, by a frustration of Iranians who are hurt actually by the biting sanctions. But at the same time, the public opinion and the expert community in Russia are not in favor of heating up tensions over the alleged acceleration of breakout time, the time required for Tehran to convert the LEU to weapons-grade high EU, let alone the fact that the Iranian leaders apparently have not adopted a decision to acquire a nuclear weapons capability, whatever we think about it or whatever suspicions we have. Nevertheless, we can also say that even the 90% enriched uranium is not yet a nuclear explosive device. It is gas, and you cannot build an atomic bomb with it. Our experts have great doubts about Iran's capability to use high technologies and the purest chemical substances necessary for the conversion of uranium from a gaseous state into metal. Let me remind you about the opinion of Mr. Lieberman, who said that Iran might require from 10 to 14 months to have access to all the bomb components. But even the components are not yet a bomb, and not the warhead for a missile carrier either. I'm not going to tackle the issue of developing the missile program or how much time it's going to take, but our estimation is that the timeline of from 5 to 7 years suggested by many Russian experts and international experts is more closely related to realistic forecasting. It means that we still have time for diplomacy. It's not a red line yet. That's the only conclusion we can make. And of course, we can add to the threats coming from this program the Arak IR-40 heavy water reactor capable of producing up to 9 kilograms of plutonium, which is sufficient for building one nuclear device. And as we know, if the existing, I agree with your estimation that in general, if the enrichment develops in this manner, so it will be sufficient for producing from 5 to 6 bombs. It's clear, but it's not bombs that can be used for a military operation. It can be acknowledged also that Iran's nuclear program activities are still strictly monitored by the IAEA, and this can be overcome only by either expulsion of the IAEA inspectors or by creating some sort of a secret nuclear center. But there is no indication to the effect that Iran might take a decision to rupture its relations with the IAEA. But we have to take into account that certain political leaders have alluded to such possibility. For instance, Mr. Borujerdi, the head of the National Security and Foreign Policy Commission, asserted that his country might withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty if the Western nations fail to recognize its right to use the nuclear energy. It's evident that we need to find a mutually beneficial solution that will be acceptable to all parties involved. As I can repeat that we are not interested in a nuclear Iran. We're very closely cooperating with our partners from the West in making pressures on Iran. But we think that it's still necessary to continue and accelerate the negotiation process. Tehran has to provide answers to all the questions posed by the IAEA and have its nuclear program fully controlled by the agency. After recent meetings with Iran, the 6 leading nations have seemingly eased their demands, as it was said already here, and no longer insist on the closure of the Fordo FFEP and a total ban on the uranium enrichment process. And they are willing to make some concessions regarding the sanctions regime. Iran should be prepared to make also a real compromise, real concession deal as well. However, it should retain its dignity at the same time. They want it. And besides, ahead of the presidential election scheduled for the 14th of June, the Iranian leaders are not likely to come up with any serious new strategic initiatives. Thank you.